you know a thing or two about recruiting, because we had Muffet McGraw and she talked about recruiting Caitlin, getting her to commit to Notre Dame, and then, you know, Caitlin changed her mind and went to Iowa. What do you remember about that? And was there any hard sell at the last minute for you to get her to make the switch?
No, the sell came earlier, right? I mean, once she told us she was not coming to Iowa, she was going to Notre Dame, it was over. I mean, we didn't pry into that. But we did notice, okay, she hasn't posted anything after she cut us. Now weeks are passing, and so I think we put a call into our AAU coach just to find out what was going on. And I realized then that she wasn't fully on board with her decision to go to Notre Dame. And so there was no sell at the end. She called me up, and I can remember exactly where I was sitting. I can remember the restaurant my husband and I were having, what we were eating when she called. I went out into the alley to get because I knew I was going to be exuberant if she, you know, did commit to us. And she said, "Do you still have a spot for me?" Yes, yeah. I do. It didn't take long. So there was no sell at the end. The sell happened really the years leading up to that.
Lisa Bluder recently had an exclusive chat with Sarah Spain. And here's the thing. They thoroughly investigated the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. She essentially revealed a great deal of information that we were unaware of. Bluder was very forthright about the reasons behind her actual retirement. In addition, what Caitlin was like off camera. And the one aspect about coaching her that completely enraged Bluder. Since Caitlin graduated, everyone assumed Lisa had simply retired. After 2 championship appearances and all that historic achievement, it seemed like the ideal conclusion. Here's the problem though. As it happens, there is much more to that tale.
I think the best part about coaching Caitlin was just seeing her behind the scenes. You know, just being a part of her life off the basketball court too. I mean, the basketball court provided all the wow moments, right? I mean, I got wow moments in practice, you know, seeing some of the things that she did, the passes she made, and the scoring, and just the lack of fear that she had. But to me, the highlights is probably the fun times, you know, being in COVID and going down to San Antonio and being locked in the La Quinta Hotel with your team.
Excuse me, I'm sure it wasn't Inns and Suites.
Lisa straight up said
Lisa expressed her displeasure with the direction college basketball was taking. The pay-for-play model, all of the nil collectives, and the entire system simply transformed into something she was no longer even familiar with. Listen, she's not the only one who feels this way. For essentially the same reasons, Nick Saban left Alabama football. These renowned instructors simply did not want any part of what was about to happen. Caitlin was at Iowa when the nil explosion occurred. Football players like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders received multi-million-dollar contracts. Before he even played, Arch Manning received enormous compensation. Caitlin received a sizable nil payment. Indeed, Angel Reese also made a sizable profit. Overnight, the game was altered. Lisa really stated that she doesn't mind if players profit from their name and likeness. They ought to have been able to do that for years, in her opinion. However, the collectives, these organized groups that practically paid players' fees to attend particular schools, were what truly troubled her. That's what went too far. She believed that collegiate athletics had entirely lost its direction. It used to be about education, life lessons, and putting the needs of the team first. Driven by who can pay the most, it's me first now. Lisa was simply unable to coach in that setting. She then turned to go.
So we got to move over to the Marriott when we made the Sweet 16. But, you know, those are the times that you just remember is the goofy Caitlin, the Caitlin that, you know, is not on show, but just being herself. And because she honestly is one of the most enjoyable people to be around. She's funny. Yeah. She laughs hard and she loves big. And when she gets your trust, she loves big.
However, this is when the interview really shines. You could hear the anguish in Lisa's voice as she began about Caitlin and the man. She is obviously incredibly proud of all that Caitlin has achieved. She also provided us with information on Caitlin's personality that we had never heard of before. You know, the genuine Caitlin behind the scenes, the one who doesn't appear for the cameras.
Over the course of my career now, obviously I've been away for 2 years and she has now since retired. But I think like one thing that was probably super impactful on myself and all of my teammates is we always had like a breast cancer game or a cancer game, and she would always bring in cancer survivors that got to kind of tell their story, but also like the impact our team had on people and how much joy we could bring to them, because those people were huge Iowa women's basketball fans, and them getting to spend a day with us like meant the world to them. So I think it put like great perspective, not only on, you know, basketball, but like what we get to do for.
Seeing Caitlin off the court was, according to Lisa, the finest part of coaching her. She had a silly, playful side. You know, she talked about being stranded in motels during the co-tournaments in San Antonio when she wasn't performing for millions of fans. They even had a catchphrase, "Lita, live, love, laugh." These are the kinds of intimate interactions that forge enduring bonds. Caitlin is one of the most delightful people to be around, says Lisa. She's so funny. She loves you when she trusts you, and she laughs a lot. The public simply never gets to see that aspect of Caitlin. Typically, we only receive the serious, competitive, and focused version. However, Lisa then revealed something that most likely shocked a lot of people. She claimed that Caitlin's tendency towards stubbornness was the most difficult aspect of coaching her. Not only that, but Lisa acknowledged that she is also stubborn. They did, in fact, occasionally completely collide. But Caitlin's constant desire to improve and learn was crucial. Even though it was difficult to hear, she actually handled coaching pretty well. Teaching Caitlin how to play with teammates was the most difficult task. Caitlin handled everything on her own during her time in high school. She could win games by dominating them on her own. College basketball, however, is distinct. No matter how skilled you are, you just cannot succeed on your own. In order to improve her comrades, Caitlin had to learn to trust them. Lisa even shared a tale regarding Caitlin's complaint that her teammates weren't shooting adequately. "Well, you're not bringing them to the gym with you," was Lisa's flawless reply. "That's just coach jargon. You can't expect everyone to share your level of obsession." Caitlin had to come to terms with the fact that not everyone is as intense as she is, and that's perfectly acceptable. You make do with what you have. Lisa emphasized that Caitlin did, however, pick up those teachings. Lisa believes that the fever is directly related to her becoming a fantastic teammate at Iowa. From the outside, it appears that Caitlin and her WNBA teammates now genuinely get along. There's happiness there. Chemistry. Those lessons from Iowa were undoubtedly memorable. Sarah Spain even made the audacious but true comparison to Michael Jordan. She discussed Jordan's well-known practice with the Dream Squad, in which he simply overpowered everyone to make a statement. At Iowa, Caitlin experienced a similar situation where her team was struggling during practice, but she rallied and scored an absurd number of points within a minute. It's uncommon to have a killer instinct. The difficulty for athletes like Jordan and Caitlin is figuring out how to use their competitiveness to improve teammates rather than just irritate them. It's difficult, particularly if you're young and accustomed to handling everything by yourself. However, Caitlin discovered the solution, which is why she continues to get better. The subject of all the toxins was then raised. During Caitlin's WNBA debut season. You know, that feud with Angel Ree that was all fabricated and exaggerated by the media? Lisa was quite dissatisfied. She claimed that the media was only interested in stirring up controversy between two young women who were just beginning their careers, despite the fact that there was a lot more to discuss in the league. Lisa pointed it out clearly. She claimed that both players were unfortunate and that the media was responsible for the entire situation. That additional pressure wasn't necessary for them. They didn't have to be set against one another all the time. The WNBA ought to be acknowledged for their outstanding basketball skills rather than their fake beats. From someone who has been involved in the game for decades, that is genuine talk. Lisa is fully aware of the harm that such publicity can cause, particularly for young athletes attempting to establish themselves in a new league. It's likely that the entire Caitlin versus Angel story hurt them both more than it ever benefited their brand. Let's truly go back to what Lisa mentioned on Caitlin's transition from high school to college, though. That's an extremely important element that sheds light on Caitlin's development. She truly had to change her mindset entirely. In Elevated, she was the star of the school, doing everything. However, she had to develop into a leader who could inspire people during her time in college. Making that change is not simple, and it was obvious that Caitlin first had trouble with it. She showed amazing growth by figuring it out and becoming the player and teammate she needed to be. Many high school athletes never reach that level of success. They continue to be self-centered and only consider their own numbers. Caitlin changed. We hardly ever hear anything negative about Caitlin's demeanor, so Lisa's remark that she is stubborn is also very intriguing. Everyone often compliments her on her humility, teamwork, and how competent. However, it makes perfect reason to be stubborn. Being stubborn is a prerequisite for becoming that great. Even when everyone else has doubts about you, you must have faith in yourself. In addition, Lisa acknowledged that she is stubborn. That creates an additional layer. When two obstinate individuals collaborate, they can either produce magic or a catastrophe. And it's obvious that they worked their magic since Iowa had unheard of success with Caitlin. However, there were undoubtedly times when they disagreed behind closed doors. Additionally, those co-stories are intriguing. It's a strange moment for everyone, isn't it? Being confined to hotels for weeks during competitions, coming up with small catchphrases to boost team spirit. These kinds of encounters bonded that Iowa club in ways that would never have been possible during regular seasons. Caitlin was learning how to be a part of something much greater than herself right in the heart of it. Lisa also mentioned the Kinnick Stadium crossover game. That truly was a turning point in the history of women's basketball, man. In a football stadium, more than 55,000 fans turned out to watch Iowa play. Women were so moved by what it symbolized for women that they were really crying in the stands. For the Children's Hospital, they raised $4 million. They demonstrated that women's basketball could pack large arenas. They demonstrated what can happen when women help one another rather than destroying one another. And here's the thing, Caitlin was the motivation behind it all. Lisa claimed that because it involved more than simply basketball, the moment held even greater significance for her than the championship game appearances. It had to do with cultural transformation. The goal was to create chances. It was about letting young girls know that they are important and that their aspirations are real. You could tell Lisa was genuinely in love with Caitlin by the way she spoke about her. Coaches should show their players genuine affection rather than just respect. During some of the most significant years of Caitlin's life, Lisa served as her coach. From childhood to adulthood, from high school star to cultural phenomenon that forges an unbreakable relationship. Lisa's statement that Caitlin learns to love deeply when she trusts you speaks much about Caitlin's character. She doesn't readily give her trust, but once you gain it, you have it all. Loyalty is that. That is a level of character that transcends basketball. Lisa said that Caitlin's persistence is probably what makes her so amazing. To play with the recklessness that characterizes her game and to take the shots she takes, you must be stubborn. When used appropriately, stubbornness may be a strength. However, it also implies that Lisa was likely driven completely insane by Caitlin. It's not always possible to simply provide instructions to someone who is so gifted and strong-willed. You must persuade them. You must demonstrate to them why a solution will be effective. In the end, it's far more efficient, but it's exhausting. What is Lisa's observation regarding NIL losing contact with education and the transfer portal? It's true, but it's also a bit outdated. In actuality, collegiate athletics has long been a commercial enterprise. While the players received nothing, schools were profiting millions from these athletes. NIL merely somewhat leveled the playing field. However, Lisa's worries regarding the me-first mentality are valid. Tension arises in locker rooms when athletes receive varying compensation based on their NIL arrangements. It makes people envious. Building the team-first culture that Lisa cherished is more difficult as a result. All you need to know is that Lisa has no regrets about retiring. She is totally satisfied with her choice. She saw her favorite game evolve into something she no longer wanted to participate in. Rather than protesting or attempting to resist it, she simply left with her legacy unharmed. And what a legacy it is! One of the greatest women's basketball players in history was developed via numerous championship game appearances and the creation of occasions like Kinnick Stadium that went beyond sports. It is impossible to overestimate Lisa Bluder's influence on women's basketball. She still has strong feelings for her former athletes and the sport as a whole, as evidenced by the way she defended Caitlin and Angel against that media narrative. She had the option to remain silent. Rather, she criticized the media for causing needless fuss and possibly harming the careers of two young people. Coaching Caitlin Clark wasn't just highlights and amazing moments, as this interview made clear. It was labor. It was difficult. It required perseverance to assist Caitlin in developing into a fantastic team as well as a great player. Lisa worked hard because she recognized Caitlin's ability in areas other than basketball. Lisa Bluder just provided us with the most candid assessment of Caitlin Clark that we have ever received from a person who truly knows her. This interview demonstrates that her narrative is far more complex than what we see on the